Hey everyone, welcome back to Data and Donuts. My name is Aaron. I'm here with my friend and colleague, Dr. Darla Cooper. Today, we're going to be talking about a really important study called the African American Transfer Tipping Point Study. But before we get into that study and that conversation today, I would like Dr. Cooper to tell us a little bit about herself.
Thank you, Aaron. I am the executive director for the Research and Planning Group for California Community Colleges, otherwise known as the RP Group. I have been here for over 13 years. It's hard for me to believe that it's been that long as an employee. I started off as a director of the research part of the organization and then became executive director. It's now been 5 years. I also can't believe I've been executive director for 5 years. But before that, I worked as a director of institutional research at 3 different California community colleges. And before that, I worked at USC while I was going to grad school. And before that, I started off my actual career, my first, kind of grown up adult job as a counselor. And so my background is actually in counseling and research. So that's enough about me.
That's awesome. No, I had no idea. We always talk about a wealth of information and knowledge and background, and totally you cover like all bases with that. That's awesome. So as we get into our conversation today, could you, share a little bit of the details on the African American Transfer Tipping Point Study?
Absolutely. So it all started with a study that is still kind of going on in different ways that has evolved over time called Through the Gate. And so that study was where we wanted to look at students who we knew existed, but we needed to dig a little bit deeper to learn more about them, who had completed all or most of their transfer requirements, but weren't transferring. And so that's kind of, it's a head scratcher. Why would you go through all that time, effort, money, debt in some cases to not, and to get that far and then not go on to get that bachelor's degree, or at least try to transfer. So we came up when we started with a quantitative study. We're looking at the data. And when it's very complicated. I'm happy to share all of those resources with you. But what led to this particular study was one finding in the quantitative data that showed us that when we disaggregated by race and ethnicity, this group of students who had either met all or most of their transfer requirements, about 2/3 of them transfer. Okay, but then overall, but when you disaggregate that data by race, the group that was most likely to transfer, who had the highest proportion of students transferring, were African Americans. And again, there's that look, right? There's that. Now, me personally, I wasn't surprised by that finding because I had already gone through that experience with prior research when I disaggregated a group of students who had reached certain milestones. Black students, African American students often pop to the top. The problem is most of our African American students aren't making it to these milestones that are these tipping points. That's thus the name of the study. So we wanted to say, well, what is going on? When we look at transfer from the traditional way, the transfer rate, you're looking at a group of freshmen and you're tracking them over 3, 4, 5, 6 years, and you disaggregate by race. African American students are usually at or near the bottom in terms of that transfer rate. But then by the time they reach this significant milestone, they're at the top. So what happened? How do they go from being at or near the bottom to the top? And by the way, I told you that 2/3 of the overall group transfer. Well, for African Americans, it was 75%. So it wasn't just like a couple points over. I think that's, it is significant for those two, statistical significance. But that was like, we got to figure out what is happening. And how do we get more? Our ultimate goal is how to get more of our Black students to that tipping point, because we know that they are 75%, likelihood, essentially. So that's not the exact number, but to get to that milestone. So we went out and tried to find some support for that. We were very fortunate in getting Lumina Foundation to support this study. So all thanks, praise to them. And what we're looking at is, again, where along that journey, where along that continuum are we losing African American students? Is it at the beginning? Is it in the middle? How many are making the 15 units? How many make it to 30 units? That kind of thing. what are those, kind of tipping points that are making the difference in their experience? So looking at their like kind of course taking behavior, looking at their use of services, are they seeing counselors? Are they, getting orientation? Do they have ed plans? Those kinds of things. Is there anything there? So we wanted to kind of mine the quantitative data first and see what that tells us and what kind of patterns we can find there. Then we want to go to the students and ask them. This is a very similar approach, pretty much that we took in the Through the Gate study, where we looked at the quantitative data and then we went and asked students in the nicest way possible, why haven't you transferred? Why aren't you transferring? What's holding you back from transferring? So it would be a similar kind of approach, but with Black students, it's really about what's making the difference. What trying to, again, identify. We're calling it a tipping point, but it's not that simple. It's not like we're not expecting there to be one answer. Okay, boom, you get all your Black students to do this, story's over, right? We know it's going to be a complex answer, and that it's going to be a combination, a confluence of different factors that are increasing or decreasing their chances of getting to that, kind of at the gate, near the gate milestone. And then again, looking at, we also want to be looking at, I'll call them promising practices. Look at the schools that are having better success with getting more Black students to transfer, and that can be defined, in terms of better than other colleges, but also do they have equity gaps between, like looking at even just their overall transfer rate and where are the Black students transfer rate, and then looking at Black students in relationship to white students or Asian students usually who have the higher transfer rates. Are they equal? Are they lower? Who's having success with transferring Black students, and what are they doing that we can start to communicate and hopefully replicate across the state? So that's really, where a lot of it is coming from. That's what's been, guiding us. And as I mentioned, we start with the quantitative piece, and again, mining that as much as we can to figure out what, kind of pops to the top, looking at decision tree models. I won't get into all the statistics because I didn't do that part. but again, doing that, and then two parts to talking to the students. One is focus groups, and two is a survey. Focus groups are obviously going to be smaller, a smaller group of students, much more in-depth conversation. The survey will be statewide. We want to try to get as many Black students across the state at all different, colleges to respond to that. But again, the questions are more about what's helping, what's not helping, what may even be harming or delaying or hindering you from transferring, but also what really helped you, what propelled you, what gave you that momentum to finish. And so we want to talk to students on different places in their journey. From the students who were successful, who have transferred, we want to find them. And we also want to talk to the ones who are close, maybe in that at the gate, near the gate kind of time frame, but also some ones who are earlier, and maybe some if we can find them and get them to participate, some students who've already left, who may have, at least at this moment, given up on their educational journey, and why, and trying to find out more about their experience.
I think that's super exciting. Like I have written so many notes down. I'll probably ask you 1,000 questions after we're done talking, just because it's so impactful. And I really like the approach of, in the past, in a lot of the work that we've always done, we always try to focus on what's not working. And I like how this study really looks at what does work, what helped you along the way, and not just numerically, not just quantitatively, but really qualitatively. And I know you touched on a little bit earlier in our earlier conversation, but what are the next steps moving forward with this study?
Yes, so we have completed the quantitative portion, and we have some findings there. I'll share a little bit about that, but when we got these findings, we all kind of sat with them and went, it's not enough. It's not clear. What does that mean? What is the implication? They don't speak for themselves, I guess, is one way to put it. And so we said, well, we need some context. We cannot just put these results out as is. It's just not that straightforward. It really would lend itself to people being quite dismissive, frankly, in terms of saying, nothing I can do about that, kind of response to things. And so it's like, no, we need to find out from the students, and also from practitioners who work with at these colleges that we found have had better success with transferring Black students. Let's see what we can find out from them. Let's kind of share some of the findings with them and say, what do you think? Why do you think we found this kind of thing? And so, again, not to give too much away, but some of the things that were coming up in the model when we were looking at the quantitative data, not surprisingly, transfer level English and math. I don't think anybody's shocked that that is a kind of a predictor of success. I think there's lots of other data that didn't look at a lot of students, not just Black students. This is a major kind of make or break piece. But what is it? We want to look at that from the perspective of Black students and their experience. Another one that you kind of go, well, yeah, duh, is full-time. Students who go full-time are more likely to finish. Again, these are not things that are terribly surprising, but we need to put them into the context of the experience of the Black student and how it may be different and unique, and there may be some nuance or some additional context. Probation, again, not a huge surprise that might be a factor, but it is more of a factor for African American students. Why? Why are they being affected differently? And then counseling was another one where it helps all students, but not Black students as much, to a lesser degree. It's still helpful, but it's not as helpful or impactful, I should say. So what's going on, with that? And then finally, again, not a surprise, emoja makes a difference. Emoja helps. It is a factor that in the positive, direction. So you asked what's next. So we've got these kind of findings that, are somewhat obvious, but somewhat confounding and confusing. So what we've done is a set of focus groups with Black students. And we kind of asked the questions, and it was, I will preview this, very helpful in terms of giving us some whys and some hows in that to put with these findings. We also interviewed, as I said, some practitioners who work with Black students at some institutions that we identified were doing having more success, I'll say, with transferring Black students. So we're going to take the quantitative findings, what we learned from these focus groups and interviews, and put some resources together. We're targeting October to have those out. We want to run them by our advisory committee. We have an advisory committee for this project in particular because we need to get different perspectives on this from people who are on the ground, doing this stuff every day. So that's kind of where we're going with this, and I'm excited about being able to share more about, again, that marrying of the quantitative and the qualitative to again put that quantitative finding in context to say, oh, well, it might be related to this, or the students told us that, the counselors, the staff, whoever it was, told us, this is what they were seeing. So that's kind of where we are with the study. I said, and just to let you know, in our regression and other statistics, we looked at a lot of variables. We looked at variables that are kind of student specific, like the student characteristics and their participation, things like that. But we also looked at their academics, units and major, and did they pass the transfer level English or math, and those kinds of things, the academic side of it. And then we also looked at college characteristics, looking at demographics of the college, looking at the demographics of the faculty, looking at where the college is located, demographics of the location, things like that. So we're looking at all of that kind of went into the model, and I shared with you the ones that kind of popped out at the top of the list of having the most, impact. But again, hopefully you see by the list that I gave you, you can see why we can't just say, here's the list, have at it. There's got to be context. And I said, and it's just from talking to the students, and I was fortunate enough to do one of the focus groups. Or did I do both of them? That's terrible. I think I did both. No, I think Oh, I know. I think there was another one that I wasn't involved in. So I think I did too. But it was fascinating, and really the students helped, at least me, I'll speak for myself, think of things I hadn't thought of, to where I was like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. I didn't, but once they said it, I was like, I can see that. I can see how that would affect that, and that links to that, and this connects with that, that kind of thing. So exciting, super excited. Really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about it, and I look forward to sharing more when I can.
I think that's so exciting. And I think there's so many points. Like I said, this could be like probably a 2-hour conversation. And we're going to come back and probably talk about this as the report comes out, along with all the cool things you're going to produce. And I think, like I said, it speaks volumes when the interpretation of data is in the eyes of the person who has the data in front of them. But then when you add that level of context, you can't emphasize how much that may change the narrative of what we truly understand. And I appreciate you even saying, like, you learn from the students, and as I do, when I start reading through the qualitative, like, when you get 1,000 responses back, you start seeing themes, and you start thinking things like, why aren't these taken into consideration? What do you mean? And it really helps re-identify how we prioritize and understand the next steps forward. So I do look forward to seeing what comes from this study, and hopefully will lead to future studies in relation to this, and seeing what shifts have been made. So awesome. So my final question is just a fun question, and it's, do you prefer tea or coffee?
Well, I have issues with both. I mean, people in my life, my family, my colleagues, they're like, why can't you ever just answer a question, yes or no, A or B? And I'm like, because it depends. So I personally, and a lot of people, are going to hear this and they're going to gasp, but I can't have caffeine. It does unkind things to my body. Let's just put it that way. And so I have to avoid, and coffee and tea have like the most. And so I can't drink either. So for many years, I drank decaf of both and got by on that. And, but now now my body doesn't like coffee anymore. Decaf or otherwise, it's not the caffeine. I think it's the acid. So I ended up drinking decaf tea and herbal tea I'm forced to now. I did find some herbal coffee though. So I guess the long-winded sort of sum it up, I prefer coffee to tea, but I can't drink either. I can't drink caffeinated tea. I can't have like a glass of iced tea in a restaurant because that's caffeinated. I can't have iced coffee, fancy coffee drinks. And I'm just, everybody's like, can't have caffeine, can't have coffee, can't even have decaf anymore. So I drink a lot of water.
That's cool. So do I. I'm not gonna lie. Like I feel the same way. Like caffeine just it tears me up all the time. So don't feel like you're on your own with that one. But somehow, for some reason, I still drink it.
I cannot.
But then there's some days where I'm just like,
the price is too high. And I don't mean that literally, like Starbucks, or whatever. I don't mean literal price. I mean like on my body. What it does, I'm like, it's just not worth it. And so again, it's been many, many years and I have adapted. But I used to drink coffee every day, like a lot of people, and had to give that up. But then got decaf, and so I was like, all right, I can do without the caffeine, but I like having coffee. But now with the herbal coffee though, which I had never heard of. Anybody else out there who likes coffee but can't have actual coffee, decaf or otherwise, look at the herbal coffee. I'm not going to lie to you and say it's just the same, but it's a reasonable substitute if you just kind of like the taste of coffee. So that's excellent. My PSA for
excellent. I'm going to pass that on actually. So and try it myself. So cool. Well, thank you so much, Dollar, for hanging out today, for sharing this. And I'm really looking forward to when you release that, everyone listening. Hopefully when we release our video, I'll have the resources to share, and then we'll have you come back and share a little bit more about what our findings are and next steps. So thank you again for hanging out today. It's been fun chatting.
It's so good to see you, Aaron, and I'm glad that you're doing this. And I'm a big fan. Thank you.
Awesome. Have a good one.